In a world where knights and kings ruled, and battles were fought for glory and power, one shocking moment stands out. On September 20, 1384, in the castle of Bari, Italy, Louis of Anjou, a powerful duke and claimant to the throne of Naples, took his last breath. He had been dead for 9 days, but the news of his passing had not yet reached the ears of those who might have mourned him or rejoiced. This might seem strange to us today, but in the 14th century, news traveled slowly, and the death of a nobleman could have far-reaching consequences. Louis of Anjou was a man with big dreams. He wanted to be the king of Naples, a kingdom in the southern part of Italy. For a year and a half, he had tried to make his dream come true, but things hadn't gone as planned. His army was getting smaller, and his knights were so poor that they had to ride donkeys or walk on foot. Despite these challenges, Louis didn't give up. He kept fighting even when he fell ill, after chasing away some looters in his army. His sickness turned into a fever, and he knew that his time was near. Like many people at that time, he prepared his will, making sure that his son, Louis II, would continue his quest for the throne of Naples. When Louis died, his body was placed in a lead coffin and sent back to France for burial. Meanwhile, his forces started to fall apart, but the story doesn't end there. In Florence, a city in central Italy, people were shocked to hear that Enguerrand de Coucy, one of Louis's most trusted men, had captured a city called Arezzo. The leaders of Florence, known as the Signoria, quickly got to work. They sent letters and messengers to other cities, asking for help to stop Coucy, who they saw as a dangerous invader. At the same time, news of Louis's death reached Florence through Venice. This news was both good and bad. Good because it meant that the French threat to Italy was reduced, but bad because it also meant that Coucy, who was still in Arezzo, might be in a very difficult position. Coucy didn't believe the news at first, thinking it might be a trick to make him give up. But as more evidence came in, he realized that his mission was over. Coucy was now in a tricky situation. He was in the middle of Italy, surrounded by enemies, and he had no way to get back to France. He decided to use his control of Arezzo to negotiate his way out. He offered to sell the city to Siena, another Italian city, for a large sum of money. But Siena didn't want to pay, and Florence saw an opportunity. They offered Coucy more money and a safe passage through Tuscany, a region in central Italy. Florence was very careful in how they handled the situation. They didn't want to anger the King of France, Charles VI, or his powerful uncles, who might take revenge if they felt that Florence had treated Coucy unfairly. So they made sure to pay Coucy a lot of money and promised to treat him well. In the end, Coucy agreed to leave Arezzo and return to France, but not before he had made sure that he and his men would be paid and protected. This whole situation shows how politics and war worked in the 14th century. People like Coucy and Louis of Anjou were often more interested in their own goals and the interests of their families than in the well-being of the people they ruled. The cost of war was high, and it often fell on the poor and the ordinary people. Louis of Anjou, for example, had raised a lot of money to fund his campaign, and this money came from the people of France. When he died, many people, like a tailor named Guillaume Le Jupanier, were angry and said that the nobles cared more about their own glory than about the people who had to pay for it. The story of Louis of Anjou and Enguerrand de Coucy is a reminder of how complex and dangerous life could be in the Middle Ages. Knights and nobles might have had grand dreams, but they often had to make difficult choices to survive. Coucy's decision to negotiate and leave Italy shows that even the most powerful people sometimes had to be practical and think about their own safety. In the end, the people who suffered the most were often those who had the least power and the least say in the decisions that were made. This is just one small part of a much larger story, a story of ambition, betrayal, and the high cost of war. It's a story that reminds us that the past is full of lessons, and that sometimes the best way to understand the present is to look back at the past.